everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Ev, and today we're going to be doing a Knits and Babbles. Now, Knits and Babbles is a podcast type episode where I talk about everything that I've knit during the month, and this month is going to be January. So let's hop right into it because there's a lot to discuss. So the first knit that I finished at the beginning of the month was one that was on my needles for far too long, and it is actually Camisole number 9. So I finally finished this. I believe I had casted it on in April last year. So it almost took a year. And it's simply because the little side bands took so long. It's just knit on really small needles. It's really hard to see because it's in black. The yarn I used is Drop Snord, which is 45% alpaca, 25% wool, and then 30% nylon. Yeah, that's 100. So I just had to double check. But yeah, so that's the yarn that I used. I actually really like the way that this yarn worked up and feels. It is a 4-ply and it is traditionally a sock yarn. But since I had used the Drop Snord to knit the Louvre sweater and I had held that one with a mohair, I kind of had a feeling that knit alone, it would be thick enough and fuzzy enough to be held alone. Now without the mohair, it is a little bit itchier than my Louvre sweater. The mohair just added a little softness to it, because this yarn kind of has a little prickle to it. It's ever so slightly. I think it's the fuzz, either the fuzz of the wool or the fuzz of the nylon, but that's what kind of is prickly about it. But it's still soft. So this pattern is a beautiful pattern. It's a really fun pattern to work up till you get to the collar and the sleeve. The camisole is knit on 3mm needles, which is US 2.5. But the collar and the little sleeve bands are knit on US 0, which is 2mm needles. They are extremely tiny needles. And since I decided to do mine in black, I could basically only knit it during the day. And then the way that it is worked up, you knit the bands a certain length, and then you fold them and then sew them on the outside. But you need your stitches to be neat, and the sun is coming out. But I'm going to try to finish my sentence. But you need your stitches to be neat before, okay, 1 second. Hopefully this is better. But what I was saying is you really need to sew this on neatly on the outside because that is kind of what you see. Like the whole point is to have the stitch on the outside and be like shown to give like a nice little detailed stockinette knitting on the side. It kind of took me a lot mentally to prepare myself to sew these sleeves and the collar because you need to do it 3 times. So it's, I don't know, it's just, I needed to mentally prepare myself. And if you watched my video where I finished this one along with 2 other knits at the beginning of January, you'll see that I did it in a day. With like a goal and a video in mind, I clearly could do it and push myself. I just needed to have kind of like a goal for myself and just have a designated time to knit it and work it up, I guess is what I'm saying. But I absolutely love the fit of this one. It is a stockinette, very simple knit. And at the bottom, that is true, you do a folded hem. So you knit stockinette, and then at one point it advises you to sew in, to hold like a colored thread as you're knitting. So I held a blue all the way around in one loop, but it's just so that when you fold it, you'll know exactly which stitch to pick up and sew it to. But without that guideline, without that guide thread, I did a bright neon blue, I wouldn't have been able to, my line would not have been straight at all. So that is one really nice touch at the bottom, and I'm glad that the pattern instructions do advise you to do that because it is really smart, especially with black yarn. Oh, that could have been a nightmare. The next knit that I finished also in that video is actually my balaclava. So this is what it looks like, and I am happy to report, by the way, this one is washed and blocked now, and I'm happy to report that this one too is washed and blocked, which you can probably tell the material ended up being so floopy and drapey. I love it. And do I put it on? Nah, I'm not gonna put it on. I'll take pictures of it because it's gonna mess up my hair, but I love it. I love the way it turned out. It actually looks like a hood now, more than a balaclava, I would say, probably because of the tassel. But even if you wear it just as a hood, I don't know what I'm trying to show, it's still really nice. And I'm in love with this one. I'm definitely writing a pattern for it. I'm definitely gonna knit another one. Next time I think I might just do a one color tone, not a speckled yarn. And I think I'm gonna knit it up with not a hand spun yarn, with a yarn, like a store-bought yarn, so that I can better measure the gauge and get an accurate count for the pattern. But yeah, this was also spun up in some hand spun yarn that I spun on a supported spindle and then plied on my e-spinner. It was a 2-ply, and I believe that this is a sport weight yarn, because I have been noticing my yarns are all sport, DK, or worsted. Those are 3 very common like yarn types, which is great, but yeah, I can't do thinner and I can't do thicker. It's just usually DK worsted, and this one I think is a little bit on the sport side. I also held this one with a mohair. Now the mohair was from Sanjo Silk, so I just wanted to add an extra little fluff, like fuzz to it, but I also wanted to add some structure to the yarn, because holding it with a mohair would reassure that my yarn wouldn't like felt, but also wouldn't like tear with wear, or just, I'm still new to spinning, and this is the second fully knit item that I've knit with my hand spun. The first one was the Sofie shawl, or the Sofie scarf, and that one I just held single. But essentially basically I'm not 100% sure that the yarns I do spin, like my hand spun yarns, are up to code to be as good as like a store-bought yarn. I feel like those ones are probably, I don't know, I'm still learning. But anyways, this is my balaclava. I might be saying something entirely wrong here, but I think I'm gonna figure out my pattern writing more in February, March, when I'm finally done with my crazy OT and just have a little bit more time on my hands. So for now, that is just put on hold for now, the pattern part to it. So the next knit that I finished at the beginning of the month was actually my time skip collar. Now you may realize that these are all patterns that I mentioned in my starting the year off right, or getting a good start to 2025. I forget what I named it. It's just finishing off some whips before I fully start the year. These were the only knits that I finished this month so far, because everything else is newly cast on. So we'll get to that later. But this is a pattern by Unexfruit. Unexfruit. It is the time skip collar, and it is a DK weight pattern. I knit mine in Fibra Natura Donna, which is 100% merino, a superwash merino, the white and the blue. Now this isn't washed and blocked, but I have received the dye blockers, the dye catchers. So I washed the Sadness Garn sweater, my boyfriend's sweater, and it had no bleeding. It had nothing. It was perfect. So later I might actually wash this one and block it, because I still haven't done any of the finishing on the armholes. I did mention in the video where I finished this one up that the sleeves are curling a little bit, and they still are. So I really hope that blocking will help that out. The designer who designed this actually reached out and said that her test knits, everybody who had knit samples, didn't have this issue. So it could just be me and my yarn, but it could also just be that once I wash it, block it, pin it down, this will go away. I'm still kind of tempted to just add something, finish it. I'm not a big fan personally. This is just a preference of just like a finishing off a knit with just like nothing, just leaving it stocking at the side. I still unsure if I'm going to do an I-cord. It all depends on how it blocks out, but I absolutely really love this one, and I find it such a cute design. I love the collar, and I love the zipper at the front. It's like a fully opening zipper. So this is a really fun pattern to knit up. I had a lot of fun. I really like the way it turns out. And I'm going to say this again, the only issue with it is the pattern doesn't say when to change color. So I looked at the original design and kind of took inspiration from that. And it is a little bit tricky, because if you've never worked up short rows before, this one has a lot of short rows. There's short rows at the back, and then there's short rows at the bottom to kind of help shape it, so it is curling right now, but the back kind of has like a U-shaped bottom. So yeah, so definitely I would say that this is a really fun free pattern, but it is a little bit more advanced, especially if you've never done short rows. This was a really fun, super lovely knit, and I'm really happy I have it. Okay, I just went and put on a Band-Aid because, not to give you guys the finger, but my cut opened up. But those were 3 patterns that I had mentioned in that video. If you guys haven't checked it out, I highly recommend you do. I end up finishing all 3 patterns in that video and talk a little bit more about them. So now into the whips. The first knit is one that I'm halfway done and kind of done, because you will see exactly what you'll see what the knit finally looks like, and it is the mittens. I have 1 mitten. So these are the Bjorg mittens, or the Bjørgvotter by Strikkesoffe, or by Sofie Hågensen. These are mittens knit with DK weight yarn. I knit mine in a gray Drops Charisma, and then the blue is Rustic Heather Sport. So I am working a DK weight and a sport weight, and the pattern calls for DK weight. I'm not going to lie to you, I did not gauge swatch, and I haven't measured gauge. I just knit them and cast them on, and they actually really fit, and I'm pretty sure from my recollection, the Charisma does stretch a little bit, so if it was to stretch even just a little smidge, I would be happy. If it doesn't, I'm still really happy. I absolutely love the mittens, and I love the thumb. You kind of have like a little eye going on here, little pair of eyes, and then on the inside it's just like really checkered. Thumbs up. I give this pattern a thumbs up. It's a really nice pattern to work up. This pattern was actually gifted to me by a friend for my birthday, so I'm really happy to be working them up, and I'm definitely going to be working more of these. I'm planning to do the men's version as well for my boyfriend, but I'm thinking about doing like a gray and black to be more, I don't know, he tends to wear a lot darker colors. Now this pattern is very interesting because you work it up on 3.5 millimeter or US 4, that's what I'm using. But if you want to knit the kid size, you go down a needle, and then if you want to knit the men's size, you go up a needle and go up with the yarn, because basically the chart stays the same. You just change the needles to make it bigger. Because I mean, you can't really change the stitch count because that would change the whole look of the mitten. You have color work all around, even the side. You have this really nice stripe on both sides that is matching. And then on the thumb, you have a really nice blue stripe that matches and wraps all around. So this is a really well thought out pattern. The bottom, the cuff, is a 1x1 rib. I really like that. I think I might prefer 1x1 rib over 2x2. Is that saying too much about me? I really like it. So lately it's been getting really cold here in Vancouver, and I say really cold. I mean, it's nothing like it was back in Montreal, but it's just, I cast this on because I thought it would be perfect to have right now with me when I go out. So hopefully I can knit the second one, get it done, and then finally have mittens. Watch me finish it like when it starts getting hot. I knit the first one up in like 3 days maybe. So now let's see if I'll get sock syndrome or second sleeve syndrome or sleeve island or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, so this is why I say I'm kind of done the mitten, but not, because I have one and the second one's going to be a carbon copy just flipped on the other side. Either in the comment section or on Instagram, someone actually knit 2 of the same hand mittens. So I'm going to have to be very careful and switch chart and make sure I switch chart and stick to that chart so that I don't end up with thumbs on the exact same sides. So this is the yarn that I'm using. Drops Charisma and Rustic Heather Sport. But the Drops Charisma is a pretty soft, squishy yarn. I would say it's a little bit softer than like the Peer Gynt by Sadness Garn, but the Rustic Heather Sport, on the other hand, is a little bit more woolly. It's called Rustic Heather Sport, so it does have a little bit of like stiffness to it, woolliness. It's not itchy, it's just a little bit more rustic. It's like a woolly wool. The mittens come off feeling a little bit rustic, but because it's just for my hands, and honestly, once my hand is in it, like, it's not that itchy. It's not the softest, I'm not gonna lie to you, but like, I'm not gonna be wearing this around my neck. I'm not gonna be wearing this around anything, and it is excessively warm. Just putting it on for a couple seconds like this, I feel the warmth. It immediately keeps my hand warm, so it feels really, really nice. So I'm really glad I'm going with this. The colors, the yarns knit up beautifully in color work. So I think that this is a beautiful pair of mitt. This is a beautiful mitt. The next knit that I'm super close to finishing is actually my Clematis sweater by Maier. So this is where I am at. Now it's a little bit awkward to hold up in front of camera, and it's better than it was yesterday because yesterday I knit the collar at the top here. I just need to sew in and weave in my ends, but I just need to finish the second sleeve because I have one sleeve here with the ribbing and the Italian bind off at the bottom. I just need to, finish off the second sleeve and then work up the button band, which will change the look drastically because right now both sides of my cardigan are rolling in on each other and it's just not. So I've actually been having quite a lot of fun knitting this particular pattern up. It's a super beautiful pattern. I love the look, but I'm also a big fan of the yarn I'm using, so it makes me want to knit it even more. Now the construction is very interesting and it kind of makes you want to keep knitting. So you start by knitting a rectangle for the back panel, and then once that is done, till about like your armpit length, once that is done, then you pick up and knit 3 different rectangles, or like as you increase panels. So you have one panel on the side here, you'll work up this panel at the front, and then you'll start a teeny tiny skinny panel, but under the previous panel that you had started, and then you will connect this one to form the collar with this panel. So here you'll cast on stitches and connect both, and then keep knitting. This is what I mean when I say it's like a little awkward to show. Maybe you can see that, but yeah, you'll just keep knitting and connecting both and keep knitting the panel till you have about the armhole length. And then this side panel, you'll knit it alone till about that length. And then super fun, it's regular back and forth stockinette knitting, like knitting one row, purling one row, knitting one row. But at the same time, to keep you kind of engaged in the pattern, since it has a diagonal button band, you will do increases and decreases on either side to keep the diagonal going. So it's not just like mindlessly knitting and purling back and forth. There's still a little bit of work to do, which is kind of just enough to keep you like into the pattern and awake, which is really cool to see it being worked up. At the bottom, you have a 1x1 rib and you finish it off with an Italian bind off or your preferred bind off. I did the Italian. And your ribbing is the same length you do for the sleeve. So the sleeve is the exact same Italian bind off 1x1 rib construction, while at the same time as you knit it up, you pick up stitches and do a couple decreases along here so that your sleeve can taper out. Now I am knitting the extra small in the body, but for the sleeve, I wanted the sleeve to be just a little bit bigger. I kind of did a size small, so I did pick up a couple more stitches. I did pick up a couple more stitches around the armhole. I think it resulted in 6 or 8 stitches more. So I don't know if that will affect the final fit. I hope it doesn't. But I kind of just preferred the sleeve to have just a little bit, it's not too much more loose, but it's just a little bit more loose. I'm also hoping it'll stretch out a little bit because I did knit the sleeve the exact length that the pattern requires you to. And I forgot to mention, there are a couple short rows worked up at the top just to get a little bit of a shaping so that it's not a flat stitch pickup on your shoulder. So that's about it for this pattern for now, but honestly, it's been so much fun to work up. I really like it. And the yarn that I'm using is by Laxton's Sheep Soft DK. I'm not holding it with a mohair or anything. It's just this beautiful, beautiful green. I love it so much. It is a little bit more on the woolly side because it is 100% British wool. The skein runs you 225 meters and it's a 100-gram hank. And I bought this in London when I went with my sister, so it also has a very special like memory tied to it. So I've just been loving this knit. It's really fun to knit up, and I think it might be the next one that I finish relatively soon. And this is my last skein, so hopefully this is enough to knit one sleeve and button bands. It should be. It should be. So the next 2 knits are in the beginning, in the infancies of the item. And the first one is the Dagmar Zipper sweater. So this is the exact knit I had that I posted on my Instagram photo, this picture. This is what the pattern looks like. And I don't know if you can tell, but it is no longer on the needles. It is off the needles and it is just yeah, this is where I'm at with this. We'll get to it in a little bit. So the Dagmar sweater is a pattern that I'm working up alongside with Morgan from Morgan Unraveled. If you haven't checked her out, I highly recommend you do. And we're kind of doing a knit along. However, yeah, I'm restarting mine basically because so the reason why I'm restarting it is because last night at about 7 p.m., I was editing a video and I was knitting on this, and I was like looking at the picture of the Dagmar Zipper and looking at my knit as I was working on it. And I was like, it's weird. My diamonds seem to be really small. The diamond here, it seems to be relatively small. And I was like, that's funny. Why is it so small? It just looks like something's going on. I'm looking at it, like the snit, it's like really dense. It's really thick. I look at the pattern and it says 18 stitches for 4 inches. I take out my measuring tape. I'm like, you know what? Let's just measure it. Let's just see. I have 26 stitches for 4 inches. My sweater is too small. The gauge is too small. It's too tight. So it's making the fabric be super stiff, be super dense. And I'm like, wait a minute. I had knit a swatch. My swatch worked. My swatch was beautiful. It was 4 inches. I don't understand. I didn't change my needles. What I think happened is because the swatch, it is a much smaller fabric. When I blocked it out, I might have like stretched it out a little bit. And essentially, this being a much bigger fabric is the true material that I'm like creating right now. And like I can stretch it. I should have knit a 6x6 inch swatch, not a 4x4 inch, so that I could have seen the true material that this would build up, because the swatch is always better the bigger you make it, because then you will really see what the fabric actually looks like and will be. And clearly I've only noticed it now. I'm pretty sure, again, if I wash this and block it out and stretch it out, it'll be like a correct swatch, but I don't want to knit a full sweater and completely stretch it out. So last night, after that debacle, I went over on Ravelry and I saw someone else was using this exact yarn for, I think it was the jacket that they're making, or is it the sweater? They're not making the zipper, but they are making one of the other 2 Dagmars in the collection. They're using the exact same yarn, but they went up a needle size. They used US 5 or 5mm, which is US 8. So I reknit the back panel. I'm almost done the increases right now, and then I can just do the knitting. This is working up so much better. The diamonds are a little bit bigger right here, and the diamond here is a lot, like hopefully you can see that. Basically, I'll take a video of them side by side, but this is already working up so much better. I even went over to a friend's house this weekend to knit, and I was knitting on this one, and she was like, wow, this is such a dense, thick material. And I was like, yeah, it is. But like, I didn't think twice about it, because the yarn itself is really dense and a little bit stiffer for, I think it's like a 6-plied yarn. It's like a really dense yarn naturally, originally. But knitting it on smaller needles means a smaller gauge, which means like it's dense on top of dense. It's like it's super dense. It's very thick. But again, the swatch had blocked out. So basically I am reknitting it. And I'm actually surprised that in one night I got this far. And another thing that made me doubt myself and restart this one is I was knitting. Like it says to keep knitting till you hit, I think 13 inches for my size or something like that, like in the long. And I was working row after row after row after row, and it just wasn't getting anywhere because my fabric is so like dense. I needed so many more rows to get to where I need to get. I was like, something's off. It just felt like something was off. By the way, the yarn that I'm using is Derarum Natura, and it is Serrano in the color Merlot. So it is this beautiful kind of red wine color. I love it. I mean, red wine, it's called Merlot. So that is my Dagmar sweater. It is a pattern by Petite Knit, and I'm just still working on the back panel. So that's all I have to say for that one. Whereas the second knit that I am is in its infancy and I've made a mistake is my Gotland sweater. So I finally decided and I finally casted it on. So the pattern that I ended up going with in the end, and this knit will have its own designated video, kind of like a knit from start to end like I typically do. This is going to be the last episode in the Gotland sweater series in the Yarn Diaries, at least for now. But I decided to go with the Braidy loops. I think I'm really happy that I went with this one in the end because it is still a really dark, like it is still kind of hard to see, but you can see the cable. So I'm pretty sure that had I done the waffle stitch or the mattress stitch, had I done this one, I'm pretty sure you would have lost the beautiful detail in this yarn because it's so fuzzy. So I'm really happy I went with this. So this is kind of working up like a saddle shoulder. So you knit one shoulder and then knit the bar in the center here and then start the other shoulder. And I am knitting it up in my 100% Gotland spin. So this is a 2-ply and yeah, it's 100% Gotland. If you guys haven't checked out my experience spinning my very first sweater quantity of yarn, I highly recommend you do. I will link it in the bottom down below. But now here lies the mistake and what I did. I only noticed it when I casted on the second panel and started knitting the second panel. I, for some weird reason, at the beginning added a couple rows before doing the cable. So here there's like a couple rows and then the first cable, whereas it's supposed to be the first cable. Like you don't need, I added 5 or 6 rows on this side. So I'm gonna have to unravel this and reknit it. So basically it's like I'm here right now and this is all gonna be unraveled, but I'll get to that when I get to it. I only noticed it when I was knitting because you're supposed to knit these two the same length. And when I put them back to check them, I was like, wait a minute, why does one cable start here and not on the other side? I don't even know why I added those extra rows. I'm really not sure what happened there at the beginning. I genuinely don't know why. So again, another mistake. I guess January for me is going to be knitting mistake month because I've been making a lot of mistakes knitting wise. But it's okay. That's why we're here. So that's kind of all I have to say for this one for now. I'm working on this one really, really slowly compared to my other knits because this, since it's 100% like hand spun by me, I'm trying to really cherish this knit. I'm trying to really take my time with it and kind of just enjoy the yarn and it working up. So I'm not rushing it. So this one, that video start to end might take really long to come out simply because I just really want to enjoy my first knit. And I've learned a lot from my own spin. Like knitting it up, it is true that you learn a lot about your spinning when you knit your own yarn. For example, I have learned what it is to knit with an overplied, underplied yarn. Like I see some mistakes in my yarn spins that I did, some inconsistencies, and just things that I would now, if you gave me 2 pounds of Gotland, would do different. So I'm pretty sure next time it comes around to spinning Gotland, I will be a lot better. I for sure would want to try and get a more loftier yarn, a more fluffier yarn. I was so worried about the yarn falling apart in this one that I knit it I spun it really tightly. There's some parts that are a little bit too overplied or overspun, but I still really, really like it. Yeah, we'll see. I'm really curious. I'm really excited, and it's just a beautiful yarn to work up. I really like it. So those are kind of all the things that I'm currently knitting on right now. I do have other knits, but I haven't touched them in a while and they're kind of like in limbo right now as I'm trying to figure out and finish these ones. So those are probably going to be added to next month's Knits and Babbles. And for acquisitions, you guys saw it in my organizations video or my yarn stash video. I surprisingly got finally after 3 months the Drops Charisma order that I had put at the beginning of October. It finally arrived. Since then, I haven't gotten anything new. So those are 12 skeins of Drops Charisma, white and black, that I'm going to be doing a color work. I think I'm going to start that one in April. Have it more of like a fun spring sweater color work. So hopefully I can finish all of these by then. So that's it for acquisitions. So now we can kind of talk about my spinning, and I feel like I did a lot this month. I'm really happy and proud of myself. The first one, of course, is my 100% Targhee spin. Now this is the Long Way Homestead Breed of the Month Fiber Study. If you guys haven't checked out my first video on it, I highly recommend you do. I will be releasing one of these a month. Learn more about the Canadian sheep breeds that we have here, but also become a better spinner, try some new fibers. For example, the Targhee or Targhee, I've never spun this wool before, so this was a very first hands-on experience for me. And this was also my first time doing a 3-ply with 3 different bobbins. I had done a 3-ply before, but it was a chain ply, and that was just like the month before. I'm still pretty new to spinning. So I did keep an original lock from the roving. I thought it would be really cool to have one for each month at the end. I don't know 100% what I'm going to do with all of these yarns because it is a 12-month subscription. So I'm going to get 12 different 4 ounces of wool, and it would be cool to do something with all of them. I just started the month of February yesterday. I don't even have a full bobbin yet, but I'm just getting started so that I can have the video out at some point in February. Like, I'm really excited to try different fibers. I know some of them are going to be harder than others, but I'm really curious to see what all of these fibers will result, like what kind of yarns I'll get out of them. I would love to do 3-ply for all of them, but I'm realizing the one with February right now, I might not be able to do a 3-ply. It might have to do 2-ply, might have to do. Now this one already is a worsted weight. It is a 3-ply, but it did result in a worsted weight yarn because Targhee is such a squishy, bouncy fiber. It kind of just like bounced back, just like into itself. It's really squishy and super fun. Worsted, it is a 3-ply, 246 meters is what I ended up getting, a rough estimate out of this because I don't actually have a meter counter. I use a nitty knotty to figure out my meterage. And by the way, I actually got a new nitty knotty. I got the second size in the Ashford nitty knotties, so that is why my skeins are now an appropriate skein length. Another spin that I managed to finish this month is one that I did on my supported spindle, and it is this. So this is actually Glow from Melly Knits. It is a hand-washed and carded wool, merino cross Corriedale cross polypay lamb with 15% topical silk in it. So it is a beautiful squishy yarn. Honestly, this one was so much fun to do. I spun it pretty lightly on my supported spindle, and then I separated it into 3 storage bobbins, like little cardboard bobbins that I have, and I plied it all together on my e-spinner. But the majority was spun on a supported spindle, my bumpa.the.builder supported spindle. This is what it looks like. And what I really like about Melly Knits, and what gave me the idea to do the lock thing here, is because when you buy a Batt from her, she gives it with the original lock. So this is the washed, locked, uncarded. So you can kind of see the natural crimp in the wool, and you kind of see where that yellow comes from. So it's like white and yellow. It's the same hair, but you kind of can see why this one has a more yellow hue to it than the Targhee, which is really cool. It could also be the silk that is mixed up in here that gives it a little bit of a more banana yellow hue, but I absolutely love it. This is so squishy and so like fuzzy. I don't know why. So this is the spindle I used for my Melly Knits spin. It is from bumpa.the.builder, and it is a teak spindle. And then I also have a little matching bowl and like a little matching set. I believe this is teak wood and this one is walnut. Was it walnut or maple? Might be maple. I don't 100% remember the name, but this spindle spins super well. And since it was my first time spinning on that spindle and my second spin on a supported spindle, this was 100 grams of fiber. When plying it, noticed a couple inconsistencies, and there's a couple places I would have preferred. A couple places were a little bit thin, but the majority is a nice, luscious, squishy wool. So this 3-ply yarn also resulted in a worsted weight. It is 349 yards. So I think this is a little bit longer. So then they're pretty similar in weight and meterage. Interesting. But yeah, so there's a couple places that I was a little bit thin in my spinning, a couple places that I was a little bit thick, and I'm really trying to work that out on my supported spindle. But one thing I did do with this one is long draw. For my balaclava on my supported spindle was a lot of park and draft. Now this one I did a lot of long draw on it because I'm getting better at it. I've kind of sort of figured out the technique to it. It's really just by practicing with a supported spindle. At some point you'll get comfortable and you will kind of just naturally do long draw. I don't know, that's kind of how it happened to me. You just get so comfortable by spinning with it that like at some point you just can draft at the same time. I watched so many videos on it and nothing was helping. It literally just practice is what helped me out. But what I've noticed with long draw is it's a lot of fun to kind of just let the fiber do what it wants to do. And it kind of works on its own. The more you try to fight it and the more you try to control it, at least with this spin and my other spin right now, that's when I end up with inconsistencies. It's because when I try to like play around with it too much, it either stresses it out and becomes super thin, or it entices really clumpy like chunks to just pass through. I don't know. So I'm kind of trying to just let the yarn speak for itself, let the wool speak for itself. Oh, that's true. This is spun from a Batt. So what gave me the courage to break into my Melly knit Batt after a year of having it in my yarn stash is because I have signed up after getting the new spindle, and I actually got a spot in the Blossom group. So Melly Knits has a fiber subscription that you get a Batt, a 100 grams Batt in the mail every 2 months. So it's not weekly, bi-monthly. And I just received my first one in December. So that's why I cracked into that one. But then because I knew that Batt was coming, I spent a lot of my time spinning on the spindle to get it free so that I could spin the new Batt. So the Blossom December Batt is a beautiful, beautiful green. So this is, I opened it and I've started spinning it, but it is this beautiful green. Like a gray green. I absolutely really like it. And this is CVM crossed with Romneydale from West Coast Colors BC, and it is blended with 20% recycled sari silk. So all the little colors and the green are the recycled sari silk, which I find really, really cool. So the Batt comes in 2 sheets like this. So this is the size of Carter that she like does the Batts in. So this is what I have left from my first sheet. Because what I like to do is I kind of strip it up in slices and then kind of like this. And then I roll them up and put them in my little box and take them along with me. So I have this ready to keep on spinning. I am also using my Cravelli spindle. So I'm using 2 spindles right now. This one I just emptied it and put it on this bobbin already. So this is my storage bobbin, but this is how much I've already spun of the spot fiber, and I'm working on the spindle. So this is the cop that I have going on right now. But yeah, I really, really like it. And again, with Melly Knits, you get the original wool. So you can see what I mean when I say that the wool is actually gray. This is the original uncarded wool. So you can actually see like the little sheep, the sheep fur. And this one's really cute because it has a little bit of like a bleached light brown tip. But yeah, so this is why I say that the wool is actually gray and the green comes from the silk, which is really cool. And when you spin it up, it's even more gray. Like the gray really does come out, but it is a gray green. I don't know, I find it really cool and fun. So that is currently what I am spinning on. And as I said, I do have my Fiber of the Month, Breed of the Month fiber study started, but I'm not going to show that one. I don't know, that one you're going to have to wait till February to see it. I'm also looking to get an actual spinning wheel, a treadle wheel. I've been trying to get one, but it's been really hard because around me, for some weird reason, everything is really old antiques or really, really far, like on Vancouver Island far, and then that's like 6 hours plus a ferry to get there. Like it's really far. So I've been trying to get something used, but I might end up buying new. I think that would be really fun to have. So yeah, so we're January 28th today. There's still a couple of days left in January, but I think for now this is where I'm at with all of my knitting and spinning. I know that in my yarn organization video, I did say that I'm going to start doing a destashing, and I think I'm actually going to be starting that in February. So starting February, at the end of my videos, I will be adding a segment where I talk about all of the yarn that I've knit up and where my yarn count is. It's going to be a very small one, and we'll update it on and on in each episode. But I'm not going to do it for this one simply because I filmed that video like a couple days ago. I haven't actually finished any yarns or like skeins, and as you guys saw, I need to unravel and reknit a lot of my knits, so I'm still at the same yarn count. So I still have 179 skeins in my yarn stash. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you maybe got some knitting done. I, as always, love having you guys here with me, love chatting and just going on and on about yarn and knits and spinning. And I hope you have a lovely, beautiful day. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.